The Curious Case of Bally Buster by Ernest Ownby. Chapter 1 Peanut Butter and Pain. The smell of roasted peanuts and cigar smoke clung to the walls of the old warehouse like a curse. Men said you could still hear the screams echoing in the rafters if you stayed quiet long enough. Nobody stayed quiet in Bally Buster's place. Not for long. Marco Balbina leaned against the doorway, one foot crossed over the other, a toothpick dancing between his lips. His sharp suit glimmered faintly in the yellow light of the overhead bulbs, though the cement floor around him was dark, stained, and slick. "Boss," Marco said with his usual calm tone, "he's here. Tied up like you wanted." From the back office, a deep voice rumbled, "Bring him in, Marco. Bring him in nice." The squeal of chair legs on concrete broke the moment. Marco stepped forward, and two of Bally's men dragged a trembling man into the open. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with slick back hair now matted with sweat. His shirt collar was torn, and his lip bled fresh from where Marco had introduced him to the brick wall outside. They dumped him in the chair, wrists bound behind him. Bacalo Bally Buster emerged from the back room like a storm in a $1,000 suit. He wasn't tall, but he filled the room all the same. Broad shoulders, wide jaw, dark eyes that looked like they'd been carved out of a piece of coal. He didn't smile, not when business was on the table. "Jimmy," Bally said, his voice as smooth as the bourbon he drank. "Jimmy, do you know why you're here?" Jimmy swallowed hard, shaking his head. "Bally, I just need more time." "More time," Bally repeated, stepping closer. The click of his polished leather shoes was like a drumbeat. "Marco, did you hear that? He just needs more time." Marco smirked and spat his toothpick onto the floor. "Yeah, boss. Like the last two times he needed more time." The kid trembled harder now. "I swear, Bally, the job went bad. The guy, he didn't." Bally raised a single finger, silencing him. "No excuses. You took my product. You took my trust. And then you thought you could take my money and vanish into the night like some goddamn magician." Jimmy shook his head frantically. "No, I wasn't gonna vanish." Bally crouched so their eyes were level. His tone softened, almost fatherly. "Kid, you know why they call me Bally Buster?" Jimmy's lips trembled. He nodded. Everyone knew. Bally leaned in closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Because I don't kill first. Death's too easy, too merciful. When you betray me, when you try to rob me, you pay. And when you can't pay." He tapped Jimmy on the knee, then looked over his shoulder. "Marco," Bally said casually, "bring the jar." The room fell silent except for the hum of the old industrial fan in the corner. Marco disappeared into the back and returned carrying a jar of smooth, creamy peanut butter and a ball-peen hammer. The smell of peanuts hit the air, sharp and oddly sweet. Jimmy's eyes widened in terror. No, please, Bally, not that, anything but that." Bally stood, straightened his tie, and looked around the room at his men, his soldiers, his family. "Gentlemen," he said, "what happens when you don't pay?" The room answered in unison, voices cold and flat. "You bust their balls." Bally smiled then, not kindly, but with the satisfaction of a man who knew the world bent to his will. Marco cracked the hammer down against the table, making Jimmy flinch so hard his chair nearly toppled over. Bally circled him slowly, methodically, like a wolf sizing up its prey. "Peanut butter," Bally murmured, dipping two fingers into the jar and swirling the creamy paste like a chef preparing a meal. "A little tradition. Started with my old man. You humiliate a man, you own him. You take from him what makes him a man, and suddenly, he'll never look at you sideways again." Jimmy thrashed in his chair, but Marco's hand clamped down hard on his shoulder, pinning him. "Boss," Marco said, "you sure you don't just wanna whack him? He's small time. Barely worth the trouble." Bally turned his cold eyes on Marco, a silent warning in their depths. "I don't whack for free, Marco. Dead men don't pay debts." He crouched again, smearing the peanut butter across the handle of the hammer, his voice low and calm as a priest's during confession. "Jimmy, this is business. Strictly business. And maybe, when you heal, you'll remember that Bally Buster doesn't play games." Jimmy screamed when the first blow landed. By the time it was over, Jimmy was on the ground, sobbing quietly, his face pale and slick with sweat. The jar sat on the table, half empty, the hammer sticky with peanut butter. Bally wiped his hands with a crisp white handkerchief, calm as ever. "Get him out of here," he said, voice flat. "Patch him up, send him home. He's got a week to find my money." 1 week. Marco nodded and signaled for 2 of the soldiers to haul Jimmy out. When the warehouse door slammed shut behind them, the silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of the fan and the slow drip of water from a pipe overhead. Bally poured himself a drink, amber liquid glowing in the dim light. He swirled the glass, staring into it like it held all the answers in the world. "Memphis to Chicago," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Every racket, every game, every damn corner. It's ours. You hear me, Marco?" Marco leaned against the table, lighting a cigarette. "I hear you, boss. But expansion ain't gonna be clean. People gonna bleed." Bally took a slow sip, savoring the burn of the bourbon as it slid down his throat. "People already bleed, Marco. Always have, always will. Difference is, now they'll bleed for us." Marco exhaled smoke and gave a tight nod. "And if they don't?" Bally smiled again, the kind of smile that froze men's blood. "Then," he said softly, "we bust their balls." By midnight, the warehouse was quiet. Outside, the neon signs of Memphis flickered like dying stars, and the city pulsed with the quiet hum of fear. Word would spread, like it always did. Bally Buster had made his point clear, again. And by morning, every man who owed him so much as a dime would be lining up with envelopes full of cash, praying they'd never taste the sweet, sharp scent of peanut butter again. Because Bally Buster didn't forgive. End of chapter 1.